Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room hummed with quiet voices, chairs scraping against the cold floor, men leaning over satellite maps and code word files. But she sat still, silent, her eyes fixed on the projection of a city she knew too well, a place she once called home, a place now burning under the weight of someone else's war. She didn't move when they brushed past her, didn't flinch when one of the younger officers laid his pen down inches from her hand, as if testing how invisible she really was. She only leaned back, arms folded, the faintest shadow across her face. The truth was she wanted to be invisible, because what they were planning on that map, what they were calling a forward observation sweep and a surgical interdiction, wasn't just another mission to her. It was personal, but she hadn't told them that, not yet. A low voice cut through the static air. "Captain, are you even listening?" Her head lifted, calm, controlled. A voice inside her begged to stay quiet, to stay small, but she didn't. She looked him dead in the eye. "I hear everything." The officer blinked, a beat of silence. Then the chatter resumed like a wave rolling back over rocks. Still, her heart drummed, harder than she wanted anyone to notice. Because the name they kept repeating, the district they were deploying into, was the same one where her brother's last letter had been sent from, months ago, before he stopped writing, before the silence. And silence in this world meant only one thing. She told herself to breathe. To act like this was just another tasking, another cold assignment. But inside, the fire was already awake. And no matter how disciplined her body seemed on the outside, she knew this mission was going to burn. Hours later, the desert air clung like dust on her skin. Engines hummed as their convoy rolled forward. She sat in the lead vehicle, window half open, wind cutting her cheek like small knives. The soldiers around her, boys, mostly, tried to hide their nerves under jokes that weren't really funny. One of them, Ortiz, leaned forward from the back seat. His voice cracked with forced confidence. "Captain, you think it'll be quiet tonight?" She didn't answer right away. The headlights cut across ruined buildings, shadows flickering like ghosts. Finally, she said, "Nothing is ever quiet." Ortiz laughed, but it was thin, a cover for fear. She remembered when she was like him, eager, almost desperate to prove herself. Before medals felt like weights around her neck, before funerals became routine, before she learned that silence after a firefight could be the loudest thing of all. The convoy slowed. Ahead, the city was waiting, not with open arms but with shattered windows and burned-out shells of cars that looked like skeletons. They dismounted, boots hit the ground, radios crackled. She adjusted the rifle slung across her shoulder, the metal cold against her palm. She walked forward alone, always first, always forward. That's how they had trained her, that's how she survived. But as she moved through the broken streets, there was another rhythm inside her, something heavier, slower, a memory. Her brother's voice from years ago, when they sat under the porch light of their childhood home. "Promise me you'll always come back." She had laughed. "You're the one running off first, don't get yourself lost." He had smiled, pushing her shoulder. "Me, I'm impossible to lose." But he was lost now. And she wasn't laughing anymore. The team set up a temporary perimeter inside what was once a school. The walls were painted with faded drawings, children holding flags, stick figures with smiles. She traced one of them with her eyes, and for a moment the weight of what they were doing pressed harder than any weapon she carried. She shook it off. Duty first, emotion later, that was the rule. Still, she couldn't ignore Ortiz when he came to sit beside her, helmet pushed back, sweat streaking down his forehead. "My mom writes me every Sunday," he said quietly, staring at the broken chalkboard across the room. "Always the same thing. Tells me to eat more, tells me she's proud. Sometimes I don't even write back. I don't know why. Maybe I don't want her to hear the way I sound." His voice cracked. He didn't look at her, but she could feel the weight of his confession. He was just a kid, trapped in a war he didn't choose. She wanted to tell him something, anything, but words felt like stones in her throat, so instead she just sat with him, letting the silence be enough. Outside, the night deepened. A dog barked in the distance. A shot rang out, not close but not far enough either. Her eyes snapped to the window, every muscle tensed. The men stiffened too, but waited, always waiting for her to move first. She stood, rifle in hand. She stepped into the hallway. The air was thick, the smell of burned fuel lingering like old grief. She listened. One breath, two. And then nothing. Silence again. But silence was never safe. She thought of her brother again, his silence, his absence, the unanswered letters. She whispered, barely audible, "Where are you?" And though no one heard her, it was the most honest thing she had said all night. Minutes passed, then movement. A shadow flickered across the far corridor, too quick to be the wind, too heavy to be nothing. Her grip tightened, the world around her slowed. She motioned with two fingers, "Stay back." The younger soldiers froze, eyes wide. She advanced alone, steps slow, breath measured. Every sound magnified, the crunch of plaster under her boot, the distant hum of a generator, the faint tapping of something metallic against stone. She reached the corner, paused, leaned in. Empty. A chair rocked slightly as if disturbed seconds ago. A cigarette still smoked in the ashtray. Someone had been here. Her chest tightened. She scanned the room, every shadow a threat, every silence a scream. Then she saw it. A scrap of paper pinned to the wall with a knife. She stepped closer, heart in her throat. It was a map of the same district they had studied in the briefing room, but there was handwriting scrawled across it, words she knew, a style of ink she remembered. Her breath caught. It was her brother's. The room spun for a moment. The voices of her team blurred in the background. The sound of Ortiz's nervous laughter, the static of the radio, the hum of the night, it all faded. She reached out, fingertips brushing the page. Alive, he had been here, recently. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself steady. She couldn't tell them, not yet, not until she knew what it meant. So she folded the paper, slid it inside her vest. And when Ortiz asked from the hallway, "Captain, you see anything?" She said nothing, just an empty room. But her pulse betrayed her, because she knew the mission had just changed. And none of them knew it yet. She stood in the darkened classroom longer than she should have, the folded paper burning like a secret against her chest. Why hadn't she told them? Why keep it hidden? She didn't know, or maybe she did. Because if they knew her brother was alive, or even possibly alive, the mission would change. Orders would shift. She'd lose control, and control in this world was the only thing keeping her breathing. "Captain," Ortiz's voice again, uncertain. She blinked, forced herself steady, stepped back into the hallway like nothing was different, like the ground beneath her hadn't just cracked open. Her men looked at her with that silent question in their eyes. What's next? They were trained, disciplined, but they leaned on her more than they admitted. She knew it, felt it, and tonight she carried their trust in one hand and her brother's ghost in the other. She gave the signal, patrol formation, they moved. The streets outside were veins of ash and broken glass. Every building looked half alive, leaning as if it had grown tired of standing. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble, artillery or thunder, it was hard to tell anymore. She walked point, her senses sharpened, hyper-aware, not just because of the danger, but because she wondered if he was near. Her brother, watching, hiding, maybe even fighting for the other side. The thought stabbed. She shoved it down, not now. Her boots crunched on debris. The night carried smells of cordite and damp earth, sharp and metallic. A dog whined in an alley before vanishing into the shadows. Ortiz whispered behind her, "This place is dead." She didn't turn. Dead things still bite. He quieted. They moved deeper into the district, their radio crackles low, every man on edge. The moonlight cut through clouds, painting the ruins in silver and black. Then movement. A figure darted across the street 2 blocks ahead, small, fast, not armed, not carrying anything heavy. "Child," one of the men muttered. She raised a fist. "Stop, kneel, silence." Her eyes stayed on the corner where the figure disappeared. Her pulse quickened. She remembered her brother at 12, running across their backyard with the same quick darting steps. She remembered chasing him, laughing, until their father called them in. Now the memory felt cruel, because here a child wasn't innocence. Here a child could carry grenades in pockets or messages in shoes. She made a choice. She rose, rifle steady, and advanced alone. The others waited, restless, but they obeyed. They always did. The alley smelled of smoke and damp brick. She stepped carefully, scanning, listening. Her ears caught the faintest rustle behind a dumpster. She moved closer. A boy crouched there, thin, barefoot, dirt streaked across his face. His eyes were wild, feral almost. He clutched something tight against his chest. She froze, rifle aimed. "Stop." He didn't move. Her voice softened. "What do you have?" The boy's lips trembled, but he didn't speak. He just shook his head, clutching tighter. She stepped closer, her weapon steady but her heartbeat frantic. The boy suddenly darted up, sprinting down the alley. "Stop," she shouted, but he was fast, too fast. Then he dropped what he held, a scrap of cloth fluttering to the ground. She lunged, snatched it, heart in her throat. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't food. It was a piece of uniform fabric, torn, faded. American. Her breath hitched. She flipped it over, searching desperately, and found black marker scrawled on the inside, letters barely legible in the moonlight. Her brother's initials. Her knees nearly buckled. She stared down that dark alley where the boy vanished, torn between command and blood, orders and hope. But the others were waiting. She shoved the fabric into her vest, stood tall again. When she returned to the team, Ortiz looked at her, questioning. "What was it?" She forced calm into her voice. "Nothing we need to worry about." A lie, another one. The weight grew heavier. They pressed on. Later they found shelter in what had once been a small grocery store. The shelves were bare, stripped of everything useful. The glass windows shattered, the counters covered in dust. The men settled in. Some cleaned their rifles. Others wrote in small notebooks or just sat in silence, staring into the floor as if answers lived there. Ortiz spoke again, his nervous energy refusing to settle. "You ever think about after this? Like after all of it?" A few of the others chuckled bitterly. "After," one muttered. "There's no after." Ortiz pushed. "No, I mean like home, you know, family, kids, whatever." Silence. One of the older soldiers, Mason, sighed heavily. "I had a daughter. She's 6 now. When I left, she was barely walking. Sometimes I wonder if she'll even know my face when I get back." His voice cracked just once. Then he cleared his throat and went back to polishing his weapon. The room held its breath. For a moment, the war was quieter but heavier. She sat apart, back against the wall, listening. Her chest ached. She wanted to tell them about her brother, wanted to share the truth she carried, but she couldn't. Not yet. Because this mission wasn't theirs anymore. It was hers. Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through broken frames of the store. Something shifted in the distance. A thud, a faint metallic clatter. Her head snapped up. "Positions," she ordered instantly. The men scrambled, silent but precise, rifles up, eyes sharp. The noise came again, closer, boots on gravel. She signaled 2 men to flank, then pressed herself against the wall, rifle steady. Her breath slowed. The sound grew louder, nearer. Whoever it was, they weren't hiding. Then a voice, low, male, speaking in a language she hadn't heard in years, but one she recognized instantly. Her brother's voice. She froze, blood roared in her ears. The words were muffled, distorted, but the cadence, the rhythm, it was him. Her throat tightened, vision blurring. She wanted to run out, scream his name, throw down her weapon and drag him back into her arms. But discipline chained her. Duty pressed on her shoulders like stone. She motioned to her men, "Quiet, wait." The footsteps stopped. She swallowed hard, tears burning hot. And then, just as suddenly as it came, the voice was gone. Silence again. Her men looked at her, confused, waiting for orders. She couldn't tell them, couldn't explain. So she just said, "Hold, stay sharp." And inside, her soul screamed. What happens to a soldier when the line between duty and blood blurs? She asked herself that as she lay awake on the dusty floor of the grocery store, staring at the fractured ceiling above. Sleep never came easy. Not here. Not anymore. The men around her breathed unevenly in the dark, some muttering in dreams, others clutching rifles even in sleep. She envied them, their ability to surrender for a few hours. For her, closing her eyes only opened other doors. Memories, regrets, faces of the dead. And his voice, always his voice. Her brother's words lingered like smoke. The faint sound she thought she heard outside earlier replayed over and over in her mind. Was it real? Or was the war already eating her alive from the inside, making ghosts speak? She pressed a hand to her chest where the folded paper rested, where the torn fabric was hidden. Proof. That was real. She wasn't imagining that. He was here, somewhere in this ruined city. And yet, if he was alive, why hadn't he come to her? Why leave only fragments, scraps, echoes? The question cut deeper than she wanted to admit. She sat up quietly, pulling her jacket tighter. The night was colder than expected, the wind slipping through shattered glass like fingers brushing her skin. She stepped outside, needing space, needing silence. But silence here was never empty. Somewhere a generator hummed. Somewhere else faint voices echoed, men talking, not close but not far. She listened but couldn't make out words. She only knew they didn't belong to her team. Her grip tightened on her rifle. The street stretched out before her, veins of rubble and shadows. She thought of home, of nights on the porch when her brother played guitar, strumming badly, laughing at his own mistakes. The sound of that laugh haunted her now. Would she ever hear it again, alive in front of her, or only in memory? She closed her eyes, whispered into the wind, "If you're out here, I'll find you." When she returned inside, Ortiz was awake, sitting up against the wall. His eyes caught hers immediately. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, his voice soft. She shook her head. He nodded slowly. "Me neither. I keep thinking about stupid things, like back home, my mom's cooking. She used to burn rice every time and I'd complain. Now I'd give anything to smell burnt rice again." She almost smiled, almost, but the weight in her chest was too heavy. Instead, she asked, "Why'd you join?" Ortiz shrugged. "Thought I'd be a hero, thought I'd matter, truth. I was just tired of being nobody. Out here, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I matter even less." His honesty hit her harder than she expected. She didn't answer, didn't know how, so she just sat with him in silence, two shadows sharing a moment of fragile truth. The morning came, slow, gray light leaking into the store. The team stirred, stretching stiff muscles, checking weapons. Another day, another mission. She gathered them, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Intel says enemy movement through the northern blocks. We sweep, we clear, we hold. Simple." Nothing was simple, not here. They moved through the city like ghosts, their boots crunching on broken glass, their breaths clouding in the morning chill. The streets were quieter than before, too quiet. Her instincts screamed. Then crack, a shot split the air. "Contact." Her men scattered to cover, rifles up, scanning rooftops. Another shot. Mason cursed, dragging Ortiz behind a burned-out car. She dropped to her knee, eyes sharp. The shot hadn't been random, it was measured, precise. A sniper. Her pulse quickened. She knew that style, she knew that patience. Her mind rebelled at the thought, but her gut whispered it anyway. It's him. Her brother. The world blurred. She forced herself to breathe, focus, but doubt stabbed every nerve. Her men shouted, calling positions, returning fire blindly. She ordered them down. Don't waste rounds, wait for my call. They obeyed, though fear burned in their eyes. She scanned the rooftops, every shadow a possible ghost. Then in the distance, movement, just a flicker, the sniper's nest. She raised her scope. The world narrowed. Through the glass she saw a figure, lean, steady, rifle braced, scope glinting in the sun. His posture was unmistakable, the way he held his breath, the way he waited. Her chest seized. It was him. She knew it like she knew her own reflection. Her brother. Her finger hovered on the trigger. Her body froze. Her team shouted for orders, their voices blurred, frantic. She couldn't answer, couldn't move. Because what choice did she have? Fire and kill her own blood, or hesitate and risk losing her men? Her throat closed, sweat stung her eyes, the seconds stretched endless. Then the sniper lowered his rifle. Her breath caught. He looked through the scope straight at her, not at the team, at her. And though distance blurred details, she swore she saw recognition. A pause, a silent connection. Then he vanished, slipped back into shadow, gone as quickly as he appeared. The gunfire stopped, silence returned. Her men breathed hard, looking to her, waiting for the next move. She forced her voice steady. He's gone, stay sharp, we move. But inside she was breaking. Because she knew now, he wasn't just alive. He was fighting for the other side. The rest of the day dragged in fractured silence. The men sensed something off, but they didn't ask. Not yet. They respected her enough or feared her enough to keep their questions buried. She kept moving, orders crisp, decisions sharp, but her mind was elsewhere. With him, with that look, with the impossible truth that her brother had become the enemy. That night, as they camped in another ruin, she sat apart again. The torn fabric in her pocket felt heavier than stone. Mason approached, slow, cautious. He sat beside her without a word, chewing on something he'd found in his rations. For a while they just sat, the night stretching long and empty. Then Mason said quietly, "You look like you're carrying ghosts." She didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "I get it. We all got ghosts. Mine wears pigtails and still calls me daddy, even though I ain't been there for half her life. I see her every night. Makes me wonder if I'll ever get to be more than a picture frame in her room." She looked at him then. His face was worn, tired, older than his years. He wasn't trying to pry. He was just sharing his own weight, laying it beside hers without judgment. She wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to say, "I saw him. My brother, he's alive, but he's not ours anymore." The words rose in her throat, then died there. Instead, she just whispered, "Some ghosts don't stay dead." Mason nodded. "Yeah, and some never leave us, no matter how much we beg 'em to." The silence between them carried more than words. Somewhere in the distance, another gunshot echoed. Not close, not threatening, just a reminder. And she knew. This war wasn't about maps anymore, or orders, or duty. It was about blood, about family, about the fire behind her and the fire ahead. And she would walk straight into it, even if it burned her alive. Why did he hesitate before saying her name? The comms crackled in her ear, his voice breaking through the static. "Mara," a pause, too long, too heavy. "You're clear, move." She didn't respond at once. Not because she doubted the order, but because in that single pause, something inside her shifted. That hesitation told her what no briefing, no mission report, no debriefing ever could. He was afraid for her. And in war, fear could be more dangerous than bullets. The night pressed against her back, dense and heavy. She could almost feel the weight of the burning outpost miles behind them, still glowing faintly on the horizon. The flames seemed to chase her in memory, but here, in the dark corridor of an abandoned industrial compound, it was silence that stalked her steps. Her rifle weighed more tonight, or maybe it was just her shoulders. She crouched, pressed her palm to the cold floor, then raised two fingers to signal the others. Three shadows moved behind her, each one real, fragile human. Santos, the medic, his quiet humming sometimes audible even when he thought no one could hear. Hale, the comm specialist, always chewing gum, always pretending not to notice how his hands trembled. And Captain Reeves, the pause in his voice, the weight in his stare, the man who led but rarely explained why. Mara swallowed hard. This was her team, her fragile, imperfect, loyal team. And they didn't know the truth, not yet. A broken window groaned in the wind. Somewhere above, a loose sheet of metal flapped like a restless bird. The sound filled the silence in a way that made her pulse race faster than footsteps ever could. She pushed forward deeper into the complex. The mission was clear on paper: recover intel left behind in the evacuation, documents that couldn't fall into enemy hands. Maps, names, routes, the skeleton key of everything they'd built. But no one mentioned the real reason she volunteered. No one knew what else was buried here. Her father's handwriting. The thought slipped in like a whisper she couldn't silence. She blinked hard, forcing her breath to steady. That single folder, the one marked with the insignia of his old regiment, was hidden beneath the classified cargo. She'd seen it once years ago before it was locked away. It wasn't just data. It was his final words, words she'd been running from for a decade. Santos broke her trance with a soft murmur. Why does it feel like this place is holding its breath? She glanced back, catching the faintest glimmer of his uneasy smile. Even fear, when shared, could feel like comfort. Because it is, Mara whispered. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. They moved room by room, their lights slicing through dust and broken machinery. Every doorway was a question, every corner a dare. Hale clicked his gum, a nervous rhythm. This is the kind of place that looks empty until it is. Reeves shot him a glance. Nothing harsh, nothing loud, just enough to make Hale drop the sound and refocus. Yet Mara noticed Reeves' hand linger near his sidearm longer than necessary. She wondered if he knew, not about her father, but about the way she carried herself tonight, sharper, tighter, hungrier. She wasn't just following orders, she was chasing ghosts. They found the server room first. Ransacked, wires ripped out like veins, monitors shattered on the floor. The scent of burned plastic still clung to the air. Mara stepped carefully, boot crushing glass, eyes scanning the shadows. Santos exhaled. Someone wanted to make sure nothing lived here. Not someone, Reeves said quietly. Everyone. They didn't just pull out, they erased their fingerprints. But not all of them, Mara thought. Not the one she was looking for. Her fingers brushed a cabinet drawer, cold metal under her gloves. She tugged and it screeched faintly before sliding open. Empty. The second empty. The third jammed. Her pulse quickened. She braced, yanked harder. It opened with a metallic snap. Papers, not many, but enough. She froze, staring. The emblem on the corner, faded but unmistakable. Her father's regiment. She reached in, hands steady despite the storm in her chest. Reeves' voice cut through her focus. Take only what we need, no extras. Her throat tightened. What was she supposed to say? That this wasn't extra. That this was the reason she could barely sleep at night. That every mission she took was, in some way, a step toward this moment. She slipped the folder under the others, careful, quiet. If Reeves noticed, he said nothing. The silence stretched, long enough for her heart to calm, long enough for guilt to set in. She had just crossed a line, not the kind drawn in manuals or mission briefs, but the kind you drew inside yourself, promising you, never betray the trust of those who walked beside you. And yet she had. A sound cut through her thoughts. A scrape, a shuffle. All four froze. Hale mouthed upstairs. Mara raised her rifle, finger brushing the trigger guard. The silence deepened, every breath amplified. Then another sound, slow, deliberate, too careful to be the wind. Reeves' hand flicked in signal. Santos moved left, Hale right. Mara stayed at center, rifle aimed upward toward the steel staircase. Then it happened. A cough, human, weak. Not an ambush, not the enemy. Something else. Reeves whispered into comms, "Hold." But Mara's chest had already clenched. That sound, it didn't belong to a soldier. It belonged to someone broken, someone left behind. She moved before she could stop herself. Quiet steps, steady breath, the way she'd done 100 times. But this was different. She wasn't chasing an enemy. She was following the fragile thread of humanity in the dark. The stairs creaked. The cough came again. And then in the dim spill of her flashlight she saw her. A girl. Not older than 16. Dirty, trembling, her knees pulled tight to her chest, eyes wide as if the light itself was a weapon. Mara froze, her rifle lowered by instinct, as though gravity itself had forced it down. The girl whispered something in a language Mara barely recognized. Fear, pleading. Santos appeared beside her, breath catching. God, she's just a kid. Reeves' voice was hard, cutting through the moment. We don't have time. Secure the room, move. But Mara couldn't move, not yet. The girl's eyes clung to her, desperate, pleading. And in that gaze, Mara saw a reflection of herself. 15, abandoned in a world that swallowed people whole, carrying questions no one would ever answer. She knelt slowly, carefully, her voice softened. It's okay. The words were fragile, almost lost in the dust. You're safe now. But even as she said it, she knew the truth. Safe was a lie. No one was safe. Not here, not tonight. The girl flinched as Santos reached for her arm. Mara gently waved him back. She offered her canteen instead, a small gesture, a fragile bridge. The girl took it with shaking hands. Reeves' shadow loomed behind them. His tone was sharper now. Mara, we move now. She looked up at him, defiance flickering in her eyes. She's coming with us. Silence, heavy, crushing. Reeves' jaw tightened. But in his pause, in his silence, Mara heard the unspoken truth. He knew she was right, and that terrified him more than being wrong. They pulled the girl to her feet, her steps unsteady, her body light as though she'd been hollowed by hunger and fear. Hale muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "One more soul to carry." And somehow, those words cut deeper than any order. As they moved back through the corridors, Mara felt the folder pressed against her ribs. Heavy, hidden, a secret within a secret. She wondered, was she rescuing the girl, or was the girl rescuing her? The night outside greeted them with silence too wide, too deep. The flames on the horizon had dimmed, but their memory burned brighter than ever. For the first time in years, Mara felt something stir inside her chest. Not hope, not yet, but the faint echo of it. And with it, a question she couldn't silence. How many lies would she have to tell before she finally told the truth? What do you do when the mission changes without warning? When a life you weren't supposed to carry suddenly becomes your responsibility? Mara asked herself that question with every step. The girl's hand clung to hers like a shadow that refused to let go. She was light, too light, her bones pressing sharp beneath dirty skin. Yet the weight she added to the team was immeasurable. Every second spent guiding her slowed them. Every sound risked exposure. Every glance reminded Mara of the choice she had made. The others didn't speak of it, but silence has its own voice. Hale avoided her eyes. Santos' soft hum was gone. Even Reeves, usually steady as stone, seemed to count his breaths louder as though each inhale was a question. They reached the edge of the compound, the fence line stretching broken and rusted under the pale glow of a half-moon. The wind carried the scent of smoke, mingling with damp earth and rust. For a moment, Mara thought of her childhood, Nights when her father returned from deployments, smelling of the same smoke and steel. She used to pretend the scent meant he was invincible. Now she knew better. It meant he'd survived, barely. "Clear left," Hale whispered. Reeves scanned the right, his rifle steady, his jaw tight. "We move." They slipped through the gap in the fence, shadows threading into shadows. The girl stumbled, nearly falling. Mara caught her, felt the tremor in her limbs. She whispered, "Almost there." But the words rang hollow, even to her own ears. Because there was still hours away. The extraction point was set at a ridge overlooking the valley, far from any road, far from help. They had to move on foot, through brush and broken terrain, every step a gamble against time. As they began the trek, Santos finally broke the silence. "She needs water, food, something. She won't make it like this." Reeves didn't slow. "We can't stop. Then she won't survive." Mara felt the girl's grip tighten. She didn't need to understand the words to understand the truth. She was hanging on by threads. Reeves stopped then, just for a beat, turning his head slightly. His eyes met Mara's, not accusing, not even angry, just heavy, as though he were silently telling her, "You chose this. Now carry it." Mara nodded once. "I will." They pushed forward. The valley stretched wide, moonlight silvering the ridges. Silence hung over the land, broken only by the crunch of boots and the girl's uneven breaths. Mara stayed close, half guiding, half carrying her, feeling her fragility in every stumble. Hours blurred. The girl began whispering again in her own tongue, fragments, broken syllables too faint to catch. Mara strained to listen. A name, maybe, a place, or just the sounds of someone trying to stay awake. "Talk to her," Santos whispered softly. Mara glanced at him. "She doesn't understand me." "Doesn't matter, she'll hear your voice." So Mara did. She spoke quietly, words spilling like fragile threads in the dark. Not about the mission, not about the war, but about simple things. Her mother's garden, the sound of rain against her childhood window, the way her father taught her to tie knots with rope too thick for her small hands. The girl didn't answer, but her grip stayed strong. And somehow, Mara realized, the story steadied her own steps as much as the girl. By the time dawn's first light brushed the horizon, they had covered miles. The ridge was still distant, but closer now, close enough to imagine safety, though not yet close enough to believe it. Then the gunfire came. Sharp, sudden, tearing the morning apart. The team dropped instantly, instincts snapping to life. Dirt kicked up around them, bullets sparking against stone. Mara pulled the girl down, covering her with her own body, feeling the ground shake with each impact. "Contact West Ridge," Hale shouted, voice cracking. Reeves barked orders, his tone like steel. "Return fire, keep low, Mara, hold position." But Mara's chest burned. The girl trembled beneath her, silent, frozen. Mara wanted to protect her, to shield her, but she also wanted to fight. She raised her rifle, eyes scanning the ridge. Shapes flickered against the light, 3, maybe 4. Not a full squad, but enough to pin them. Santos fired, curse words spilling between shots. Hale called out ranges, his voice shaking. Reeves stayed calm, methodical, his rifle cracking with precision. Mara shifted just enough to aim. Her shot rang out, echoing sharp across the valley. One figure dropped. The girl whimpered, covering her ears. Mara's chest twisted. Every bullet she fired was a promise to end this, to get her through. The firefight stretched, seconds feeling like minutes, minutes like hours. Dust stung her eyes, smoke burned her throat, and all the while the folder pressed against her ribs like a hidden wound. When the last echo faded, silence returned, heavy and unnatural. Reeves scanned the ridge, then lowered his rifle. Clear. The team breathed, shaky, uneven. Santos checked Hale's arm, grazed, bleeding but not broken. The girl clung tighter to Mara, face buried against her vest. Reeves' eyes lingered on Mara again. He didn't speak, but she read it in his stare. This is only the beginning. They moved quickly, urgency burning hotter now. The ridge loomed closer, but every step carried new weight. The girl's survival, Hale's bleeding arm, their dwindling supplies, and the truth Mara hid in her vest. By midday, exhaustion pressed hard. They stopped briefly under a broken tree line, shadows offering fragile shelter. Santos tore strips of cloth, wrapping Hale's arm. Mara gave the girl the last of her rations. She ate slowly, like someone who hadn't tasted kindness in years. Then softly she spoke, one word barely audible. "Anya." Mara froze. "What?" The girl looked at her, eyes fragile but clear. She repeated it. "Anya." She tapped her chest. "Her name." Mara's throat tightened. She nodded, whispering it back. "Anya." The girl smiled, faint, trembling but real. For the first time since they'd found her, light touched her face. Hale gave a soft chuckle, even through the pain. "Guess she likes you." Santos added quietly, "Maybe she trusts her more than us." Reeves said nothing. He just checked his rifle again, gaze distant, calculating. But Mara saw the flicker in his eyes. He wasn't just worried about the girl. He was worried about what the girl meant for the mission, for their survival, for the unspoken lines already crossed. As they resumed the march, Mara repeated the name under her breath. Anya. It felt heavy and light all at once. No longer just a burden, now a person, a soul. By late afternoon, the extraction ridge finally came into view. Relief stirred faintly, but it was fragile, easily broken. And it broke the moment Reeves raised his hand, signaling halt. Mara froze, heart pounding. She scanned the ridge. Nothing at first, just rocks, brush, sky. Then movement, small, subtle, too careful. "Not empty, not safe." Reeves spoke low. "They're waiting for us." The weight of his words settled heavy. The extraction point had been compromised. Anya clung tighter. Santos swore under his breath. Hale whispered, "Now what?" Mara's eyes burned against the horizon. The ridge had seemed like salvation, but now it looked like a trap. And deep inside, beneath fear and exhaustion, she felt another truth rising. This wasn't about survival anymore. Not just theirs, not just Anya's. It was about the choices she would make in the moments ahead. Choices that could not be undone. What do you do when safety itself becomes a lie? The ridge was supposed to be their deliverance. The high ground, the signal flare, the waiting bird to carry them home. Instead, it stared back at them like the open mouth of a trap, waiting for them to step inside. Mara felt Anya's fingers tighten around hers, small and trembling, as though the child somehow sensed the weight of the silence that followed Reeves' words. "They know we're coming," he said at last, low and measured, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Santos swore under his breath. Hale adjusted his bandaged arm, face pale but steady. No one dared to speak louder than the wind. Mara's mind raced. A compromised extraction meant only two possibilities. Either they'd been tracked since leaving the compound, or someone had given them away. Both truths tasted bitter. Both meant blood. "Options?" Santos asked quietly, his voice cracking like dry wood. Reeves' jaw clenched. "We scout, confirm numbers, then decide." He looked to Mara, just a glance, but it was enough to say more than words. She was the sharpest shot, the quietest mover. This part was hers. Mara swallowed, nodded. "I'll go." She left Anya with Santos, the girl's grip peeling from her hand like a shadow unwilling to part. The separation cut deeper than she expected. She whispered, "Stay with him. I'll be back." Anya's wide eyes followed her, pleading silently, as though she already knew promises in war broke easier than glass. Mara moved low through the brush, every muscle taut, breath measured, senses sharpened to the edge of pain. She climbed the rocks in silence, listening more than looking, letting the land speak to her. It didn't take long. Voices, not many but enough. She froze, pressing into stone, letting their words drift on the breeze. Foreign tongue, clipped and hushed. Orders, watchful, disciplined. Through a crack in the rock she caught sight of them, 4 figures dug into cover, rifles trained on the valley below. Waiting, not scattered patrol, an ambush. Her heart pounded, 4 she could see, but how many she could. She slid back, careful, deliberate. But as she turned, her boot dislodged a pebble. It clattered down, loud in the stillness. The voices above cut sharp. Movement followed. Mara's body moved before her mind caught up. She dropped low, rolled into brush, heart slamming. A shout rang out, then footsteps coming closer. She crawled, silent, desperate. The ground scraped her palms, tore at her knees. She gripped her rifle, breath shallow. She could end it now, one shot, clean and fast. But the crack of her weapon would set fire to the silence, and the ridge would burn with return fire. So she held her breath, waited. A shadow passed feet away, boots heavy, searching. Her finger trembled on the trigger. The man paused, listening. He muttered something under his breath. Then he moved on. Mara didn't breathe again until his steps faded. Only then did she slip back down the slope, every nerve screaming for silence. When she reached the others, she didn't speak at once. She crouched, breath still uneven, eyes darting back to the ridge. "Well," Reeves asked. "4, maybe more," she shook her head. "They're waiting, full ambush." Reeves cursed under his breath. Hale muttered, "So extraction's a bust." Santos looked at Anya, then at Mara. His voice was soft but heavy. "Then what do we do with her?" The words cut through the air like a blade. Mara's chest tightened. "She comes with us." "Where?" Hale asked, almost desperate. "We can't outrun them. We can't outgun them. We're bleeding supplies, and now—" He stopped, teeth clenched against the pain in his arm. Reeves' stare cut through the noise. "There's a fallback point. Secondary extraction 20 clicks east, but it's through bad ground." "Bad how?" Santos asked. "Exposed, no cover. If they're tracking us, it's suicide." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mara looked at Anya. The girl stared back, silent, but her eyes, they asked the same question. "Will you leave me?" And Mara knew, with the clarity of a blade pressed against skin, that she couldn't. She spoke before anyone else could. "Then we go east." Reeves' eyes burned into hers. For a moment she thought he would fight her, call her reckless, insubordinate, but he didn't. He just nodded once, sharp and resigned. "East," he said. The march that followed was worse than any battle. The land stretched barren, sun beating merciless, heat shimmering like fire on stone. Their shadows crawled long across cracked earth. Every step drained them. Every breath tasted of dust. Hale stumbled once, Santos catching him, muttering encouragement through clenched teeth. Reeves walked silent, his eyes scanning, always scanning. Mara carried Anya when her small legs failed, the girl's weight pressing into her chest like fragile trust. Hours bled into hours. The sky turned molten with evening light. Their canteens ran dry. Hunger gnawed sharp, but silence gnawed sharper. And through it all, Mara felt the folder against her ribs. Hidden, burning, her father's words waiting, whispering. She hadn't read them yet, hadn't dared. Not while others still carried the burden of her choice unknowingly. But with every step the weight grew heavier. Near sunset, they found brief shelter beneath a ridge of broken stone. Shadows cooled their skin, though the air still pressed thick. They rested, just long enough to breathe without choking. Santos checked Hale's arm. Infection had already set in, skin hot and angry. Hale gritted his teeth but said nothing. His silence spoke louder than screams. Anya sat against Mara's side, eyelids heavy, her body curled small. Mara brushed dirt from her cheek without thinking, the gesture almost maternal. The girl stirred, whispered something too faint to catch, then drifted into uneasy sleep. Santos watched, his eyes soft. "She trusts you more than any of us." Mara looked down at the girl. "She doesn't have a choice." "None of us do," Santos said quietly. The words lingered, heavier than the heat. As night fell, they pushed on. The land stretched endless, silvered by moonlight. The silence pressed harder now, broken only by the crunch of boots and the whisper of wind. Then movement. Shadows against the horizon, not theirs. Reeves spotted them first. He raised his hand, dropped low. The team froze, hearts pounding in unison. Figures moved along the ridgeline, silent, watching. Not many, but enough. "They're tracking us," Reeves whispered. Myra's stomach turned cold. Anya stirred in her arms, sensing the shift. Mara whispered, "It's okay," though the lie tasted bitter. Reeves made the call. "We break south now, move." They ran. Not in silence now, in desperation. Boots pounding, breath ragged, heartbeats like war drums. The land opened wide, merciless. The shadows followed, closing. Gunfire cracked, stone shattered, dust erupted. Mara clutched Anya tight, every step a prayer. Santos fired blind over his shoulder. Hale stumbled, cursed, pushed forward with sheer will. Reeves shouted directions, voice raw with command. The chase burned across the night. No cover, no pause, just survival, naked and brutal. Then salvation flickered. Lights faint, distant, a vehicle moving slow across the horizon. Reeves saw it too. "There," he shouted. But between them and those lights stretched open ground, and behind them the shadows closed fast. Mara's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she kept moving. Anya's heartbeat pressed against her own. Because in that moment nothing else mattered, not the folder, not the lies, not even her own survival. Only hers. "Anya, how far can you run before the ground itself betrays you?" Mara didn't know. She only knew her legs were fire, her lungs knives, and still she kept going. Anya's arms clung tight around her neck, weightless and crushing at the same time. Behind them, gunfire snapped the night, hot metal sparking stone. Ahead, the faint glow of headlights wavered like a mirage. Every step was a gamble between hope and death. Reeves shouted over the chaos, his voice hoarse but sharp. "Keep moving, don't stop." Hale stumbled, nearly fell, then forced himself upright with a curse, blood darkening the bandage at his arm. Santos dragged him forward with one hand, firing with the other, his aim wild but desperate. The shadows behind them grew clearer, figures closing fast, more than four, more than they could count. Mara's chest burned. Her grip on Anya tightened. The girl's face pressed against her shoulder, silent, but Mara felt the tremors in her small body. She wanted to whisper comfort, but there was no breath left for lies. The lights ahead wavered, slowed. A vehicle, real, not a mirage, but whose? Reeves barked, "Smoke now." Hale fumbled a canister from his pack, teeth gritted, and hurled it behind them. A plume of white smoke exploded, swallowing the night. Shouts echoed from the pursuing ridge, angry, disoriented. "Go," Reeves snapped. They broke from the cover of the ridge, sprinting across open ground. The headlights grew closer, clearer now. A truck, armored, painted in worn military green. It screeched to a halt, doors slamming open. A voice shouted in clipped English, "Move, move." Friendly or another trap? Reeves hesitated only a second, then he waved them forward. Inside. Santos shoved Hale first, then climbed in after. Mara clambered in with Anya clutched to her chest. Reeves dove last, slamming the door as bullets hammered the steel. The engine roared. The truck lurched forward, tires spitting dirt. Inside, the air was hot, cramped, reeking of oil and sweat. The driver glanced back, a soldier, uniform dusty but familiar. "You're late." Reeves' jaw clenched, "And you're early." Mara caught the edge in his tone, distrust, calculation. But the truck was moving, the night rushing past, and for the first time in hours, the sound of pursuit faded into distance. Still, Mara couldn't unclench her fists. Anya pressed close against her, eyes wide, lips trembling. Mara whispered, "It's okay, you're safe." But in her chest, she knew it wasn't true. The folder pressed against her ribs, heavier with every mile. She felt its edges through her vest, its presence like a hidden wound. She hadn't opened it yet. She hadn't dared. But the thought gnawed at her. What if the answers inside were worse than the questions she'd carried for years? The truck rattled over broken roads, headlights carving tunnels of light through the dark. Santos pressed bandages tighter against Hale's arm, murmuring encouragement. Reeves sat stiff, rifle across his lap, eyes locked on the road ahead. No one spoke of the ambush. No one asked why the extraction point had been compromised. The silence was thick, each of them carrying their own questions, their own ghosts. Mara looked at Reeves, studied the hard set of his jaw, the shadows under his eyes. She wondered if he knew, not about the folder, but about her, about the way she had changed since the night began, about the girl asleep against her chest, fragile as glass, heavier than the mission itself. Hours passed. The truck climbed into rougher terrain, winding through valleys where moonlight couldn't reach. The air grew colder, biting through sweat-soaked uniforms. Finally, the driver pulled to a stop beneath a rocky overhang, engine rumbling into silence. "This is as far as I take you," he said. His accent was thick but his words sharp. "From here you walk." Reeves didn't argue. He just nodded, gave the man a curt thanks, and signaled the others to disembark. They climbed out, boots crunching gravel. The night pressed heavy again, silence swallowing them whole. The truck drove off, taillights bleeding into darkness. Then it was gone. The land stretched barren, jagged ridges cutting the horizon. Somewhere east lay the fallback point, but it felt like a world away. Santos adjusted his pack, voice low. "We're running on fumes." Reeves checked the map under red light, his expression unreadable. "We push through, no stops." Hale groaned softly but said nothing. His silence worried Mara more than words would have. They started forward again, each step heavier than the last. Anya clung to Mara's hand now, walking on her own but stumbling often. Every time she fell, Mara pulled her up, gentle, patient, though her own legs screamed. The night deepened. Stars cut sharp against the black sky. The silence grew unbearable. Then softly Anya spoke. "Papa." Mara froze. The word was clear, fragile, a knife. Anya looked up at her, eyes shimmering. She whispered it again. "Papa." Mara's chest tightened. She knelt, brushing dirt from Anya's cheek. "He's gone?" she asked softly, unsure if the girl understood. Anya nodded once, tears brimming. The world tilted. For a moment Mara saw herself in those eyes, 15, standing in a doorway, waiting for a father who would never return. The pain was the same. The silence the same. The wound that never healed. She pulled Anya into her arms, held her tight. "I know," she whispered, voice breaking. "I know." Reeves' voice broke the moment. "We move now." Mara rose, still holding Anya's hand. But inside something had shifted. The girl was no longer just a responsibility. She was a mirror, a wound reopened, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to heal. They marched until dawn. The first light painted the ridges in pale gold, shadows stretching long across the valley. Exhaustion weighed heavy, but the sight of the horizon gave them fragile strength. Then Reeves stopped. Ahead on the ridge, figures moved. Not distant, not hidden, waiting. Another ambush. Santos cursed, Hale spat blood, Mara's stomach dropped. Reeves scanned quickly, eyes hard. They knew, they always knew. Mara's hand brushed the folder against her ribs. A thought struck, sharp and cruel. Could this be why? Could the secret she carried be the reason the enemy stayed ahead, step for step? Her breath caught. She pushed it down. "Not now, not yet." Reeves spoke, his voice iron. "We fight through, no choice." The ridge ahead shimmered with heat. The figures shifted, rifles glinting. The air thickened, electric with the weight of what was about to break. Mara pulled Anya close, whispered, "Stay low, stay behind me." Her rifle felt heavier than ever, her chest tighter, her heart louder. The silence before the storm stretched long. And then the first shot rang out. What do you cling to when the ground beneath you is nothing but fire and lies? Mara didn't have the answer. Not yet. She only knew the ridge ahead was alive with rifles and there was no cover wide enough to shield them all. The air cracked as the first bullets sliced down, snapping stone into shards. Santos dragged Hale into a shallow dip, returning fire with frantic bursts. Reeves dropped to one knee, his aim deliberate, precise, each shot a rhythm of discipline. Mara threw herself against a jagged outcrop, pulling Anya down with her, shielding the girl's body with her own. The child's small fingers clawed at her sleeve, trembling, silent sobs caught in her throat. Mara's mind raced. The folder pressed against her ribs like a second heartbeat. She hadn't opened it, hadn't dared. But in this storm of bullets, one thought consumed her. If this is where it ends, I need to know. Her hands moved fast, almost mechanical. She ripped the seal, slid the papers free. Her eyes darted over words blurred by adrenaline. Names, coordinates, photographs clipped with rusted pins, and then her breath caught. Her father's face. Not as she remembered him, not smiling in the uniform on the mantel at home, but grainy, sunken-eyed, standing beside men she had hunted for years. His name beneath, not listed as missing, not honored as fallen, classified as defector. The ground tilted. For a second the firefight blurred to silence, her chest hollowing out. The man she had fought to honor, whose absence had shaped every choice, every sleepless night, branded as traitor. She almost tore the papers apart, almost screamed, but a sound pulled her back. Anya's whisper, fragile, terrified, "Mara." Mara shoved the folder back inside her vest, breath sharp, ragged. Later she would bleed this truth dry. Right now, the girl beside her needed something she couldn't lose, not her father, not the war, not the lies, just her. She raised her rifle, sighted high. Her body moved without thought, her fire joining Reeves' rhythm. Every shot carried weight, not just of survival, but of rage, grief, betrayal. The ridge roared back. Santos shouted, "We can't hold." Reeves barked, "We don't need to hold, we break through, on my call." Bullets peppered stone inches from Mara's head. Dust choked her lungs. Anya's sobs grew sharper, panic clawing at her chest. Mara turned, grabbed Reeves' arm. Her voice was low, fierce. "I'll take her. Find the gap, get them out." His eyes burned into hers, searching. For doubt, for weakness. He found neither, just a woman already decided. He nodded once, a soldier's pact, no words wasted. Mara crouched, pulled Anya against her chest. "Close your eyes," she whispered. "Don't let go." The girl obeyed, burying her face into Mara's neck. Reeves signaled. Santos unleashed covering fire, Hale forcing himself upright to add his own broken bursts. Mara surged from cover, legs burning, the child weightless in her arms now, not a burden but a reason. The ridge screamed with gunfire. Dirt exploded around them. The air was heat and thunder, but Mara didn't stop. She moved like the fire itself bowed to her. She reached the slope, breath ripping from her lungs. Reeves and Santos carved space with their rifles, dragging Hale behind them. The enemy line faltered, a momentary fracture. Mara plunged into it, body a shield around Anya, vision narrowed to a tunnel of survival. She didn't feel the first bullet graze her arm. She didn't register the second carving a line across her thigh. She only felt the girl's grip tighten, a desperate anchor. They broke through. Down the slope into the valley, legs stumbling, bodies raw. Reeves shouted for them to keep going, to not look back. But Mara looked once. The ridge burned with muzzle flashes, and in that chaos she saw more coming, too many. They wouldn't outrun it. Reeves knew it. She saw it in his face when their eyes met, the decision already forming. "No," Mara snapped before he could speak. He didn't answer, just pressed a spare magazine into her hand, eyes steady, voice low. "Get her there." Her throat closed. She wanted to argue, to demand he not turn back, but the words died because she understood. Some fights weren't meant to be shared. He ran toward the ridge. Santos cursed, followed without hesitation. Hale tried, but his body gave out and he collapsed, screaming their names. Mara held Anya tighter, forcing her legs to move. Each step was ash, each step betrayal, the sound of Reeves' last stand carved into her spine. The valley stretched endless, but at its far end, like a scar of salvation, she saw it, an old farmhouse, roof half-collapsed, a flag tattered but familiar waving from its gate, the fallback point. Her legs gave out at the threshold. She crashed to her knees, Anya still cradled in her arms. Soldiers rushed forward, medics tearing Hale from the ground behind her. Voices blurred. Orders flew. Hands reached for Anya. Mara resisted at first, clutching the girl tighter until one medic met her eyes and whispered, "We've got her. You did it." Her arms loosened, slowly, reluctantly. She felt Anya's small body lift away, her hand slipping from Mara's. The girl looked back once, eyes wide, unblinking. Mara managed a nod, a smile cracked through blood. Then the girl was gone, into the safety of arms that weren't hers. Mara's chest heaved. She pulled the folder from her vest, stared at it one last time. Her father's face stared back, accusing, hollow. She thought of Anya, of her whisper for a father who would never come home, of her own years wasted chasing a shadow that betrayed her. She set the papers on the dirt, struck a match from a medic's kit, watched the flame eat through ink and lies, curling truth into ash. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lift, not gone, but changed. Night fell again before the shooting on the ridge stopped. None of the men who stayed behind returned. Mara sat in silence, rifle across her knees, watching the horizon as if it owed her answers. None came. But Anya slept inside, safe, breathing, dreaming. And maybe that was enough. She closed her eyes, exhaustion swallowing her whole. For once she let it. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.